Independent Consulting Manual Roundtable discussion. Our topic today is pricing and money. I'm your facilitator, and in just a moment, our esteemed panelists will be introducing themselves to you. I think you're going to find today's topic extremely interesting because there's so much depth involved in pricing your services and dealing with the financial aspect of consulting. To paraphrase Yogi Berra, consulting is 90% pricing and the other half is the delivery. Each of our panelists has a wealth of experience and hard-won lessons to share on this topic, so pay attention to the next 45 minutes. It's going to be solid gold, I promise. My name is Kai Davis. I'm an outreach consultant. I help consultants, product creators, coaches, and authors grow their audience by managing their most valuable relationships and helping them build new ones. And again, I'll be your facilitator for this panel discussion. I'm now going to ask our panelists to introduce themselves. Jonathan?
Sure, thanks, Kai. My name is Jonathan Stark. I'm from lovely Providence, Rhode Island, and I'm a mobile strategy consultant. I help CEOs transition their business from the sort of legacy desktop era to a more modern mobile architecture.
Excellent. Julie?
I am Julie Elster of Just Tell Julie, and Just Tell Julie is a virtual accounts receivable service geared towards freelancers. So basically, I'm helping to ensure that your invoices are getting paid.
Excellent. Thank you. Mojca?
My name is Mojca Mars from Super Spicy Media, and I'm a social media consultant that helps software companies and online product creators manage their social media and generate new leads so they can invest their time in other aspects of their business.
Thank you. And Jeremy?
Hey, I'm a software architect specializing in Ruby and Ember, and I help e-com and SaaS applications make the transition from monolithic applications into a microservices architecture.
Thank you all so much. And so today our topic is going to be pricing and money. It's going to be a roundtable format, so I have a couple questions I prepared, but we'll be going through them one at a time and just talking about them and seeing what comes up from them. So the first question I have for the group is, how do you price your services? And Jeremy, if you'd like to kick us off.
Yeah, sure. Most of my clients I work with just on a weekly basis where we've just agreed on a weekly rate, and then every week we try to basically squeeze in as much work as we can fit into the time that I have allotted to them. This was after years of doing hourly billing and tracking hours and doing a lot of back and forth over, you know, what's included in this hour or that hour, and I found that weekly really eases a lot of that and makes my interactions with clients a lot smoother.
Excellent. And Jonathan?
Sure. I used to do hourly billing years ago, and I moved away from that in about 2006 to a value-based model. So I would price software development work based on the outcome to the business that I was helping, and that was huge for me. And I found that over time, it actually started to affect the kind of services I offered. So I started moving away from sort of hands type, you know, hire me for my hands to code things, up the value chain to more strategic concepts, you know, like how to set up the architecture for the application or how to choose external teams and manage external teams to actually deliver the work. And so my business now is almost 100% advice. So I still am an expert in software development, and I do that on the side, and for occasionally I'll do nonprofit pro bono things or just side projects for myself. But these days, it's just, you know, people pay me by the month to pick my brain.
Excellent. And Julie, how do you price your services?
It depends on the type of work I'm doing. If I'm doing like one and done AR collection work, it's going to be commission based, so I would take a percentage of what I'm able to collect on that invoice. If I'm doing month to month work for somebody, I work on monthly retainer. I found is the best way for me to price out my services. But a lot of my clients, I'd say the majority of my clients are hourly. They bill hourly.
Excellent. And Mojca?
So I never did hourly billing, but I price currently my my services based on my clients' needs. So I always create different packages from what I know my clients need, and I bill them by monthly retainer. But I also have one productized consulting offering, which is Super Spicy Sessions, and that's one-time engagement thing, and there's a one-time prepayment, and that's it, and it's fixed price, fixed scope. So I have kind of two different ways to tackle this.
Excellent. So across the group, we can see that there's a wide range of different ways that we've chosen to bill clients for our time, for the outcomes we're able to help deliver, for the value we're able to provide. I think one thing we can all connect on, though, is no matter which methodology we're following, we all might run into the situation where a client objects to the price we put on our work, our time, a week. Across the group, I'm curious, how have you what strategies have you developed to help you deal with clients that object to the price that you present?
I can say that it starts way back before you even are talking to a client. So if you position yourself as a high-value consultant and you offer a very high-value service, sort of a premium thing, then you're automatically going to attract people who aren't going to be that price sensitive in the first place. If you do end up getting someone who's price sensitive, there are a bunch of things you can do to deal with that, but it could be a red flag that they're not a good fit for you. But one thing that you can do, assuming that that's not the case and that maybe you can, at least how do you find out if they're a good fit or not, is to have what I call a valued conversation with them. The way it usually goes, they'll get an email, somebody will say, hey, we heard you're the go-to guy for responsive web design on mobile or whatever. And we'll set up a phone call, and I'll talk to them, and they'll initially start off by talking about something they want me to do, like, oh, we want you to rebuild these 3 pages, some very tactical, specific labor that they want me to perform. And in my mind, that's kind of like a self-diagnosis. They know they have some kind of problem, and they think that doing this thing is going to solve that problem. And as a professional, I think it's my moral obligation to at least make sure that I agree that the prescription that they're giving to themselves is accurate. So I'll say, okay, that's great. They finished brain dumping what they want me to do or they think they want me to do. And I'll say, okay, but why? What's the outcome of this? Because it's going to cost a lot of money to hire me. I want to make sure that you're going to get good ROI out of this. So why is this just a vanity project for the CEO, or is this actually going to move the needle in your business? And they'll think, well, geez, that's a good question. And they either know the goal and they can sort of articulate that, and we can start talking about the underlying motivation. Why do this project now? How well to do it? Is this a prototype, or is this laying the groundwork for the next 10 years of their business? Why am I the right guy? Is there some cheaper option that they could use that would be just as good? I try and talk them out of hiring me. And by the end of that phone call, you, as the consultant, you'll have a really good idea if there actually is any benefit to the customer. So, if you're asking them to give you, $10,000, $50,000, or $100,000, they're going to want that money back and then some. So if you can't find any possible way for them to do that, then it's probably a bad fit. If you can find a way through this discussion, then they'll kind of have talked themselves into the value of it, and that the ultimate fee that I'm going to put on the proposal, I give them a quote, and here's the amount that it's going to cost. It'll seem reasonable compared to the outcome that we've discussed. So if we can at least come to a conceptual agreement about what the value of the outcome is, then it sort of diffuses a lot of the price sensitivity and positions you as an expert. So people aren't going to be your competitors will be less likely to have any chance against you.
That's wonderful. That's a great way of taking an objection and really defeating that objection. Jeremy, how about yourself? When a client objects to your price, what sort of strategies do you find yourself using?
I often try to dig into exactly the details of the role that they're looking for me to fill. Often, if there's a price objection, it turns out that they think they're looking for a senior developer type of a person, and then when we dig in and start asking, what are the problems that you're having, and how much ownership of this project are you looking for somebody to take? Sometimes it turns out that, yeah, they really do need senior people, and they just don't have a good idea of what market rates look like. And sometimes we discover, oh, no, you're not looking for a senior person. You're looking for a junior developer that you can parcel out tasks to that is, like Jonathan said, just a pair of hands that's going to come in and do some stuff on the product or on the project. And if that's the case, you don't need senior people for that. You need senior people when it's, decisions about how are we going to architect this thing, how are we going to deploy it, how are we going to support it over the next few years. And if they're not looking for people to make those kind of decisions, then I'm not a good fit for that project, and rightly so. They probably don't want to pay my rates, and so it's often a process of figuring out, kind of like Jonathan said also, have they self-diagnosed a problem and maybe diagnosed it incorrectly, and so they think that they need things that they don't actually need, and so sometimes it's just that process of trying to talk them into looking for more junior talent.
Excellent. So very heavy on the communication in both cases. Julie, so you have an interesting mixture of a commission-based service, but you also provide monthly retainer-based services.
Right.
How do you deal with objections on either side of that spectrum?
So I really don't get too many people objecting to my rates, but I see, like on my client's end, I do see a lot of that in dealing with unpaid invoices. And I can tell you, like going back to what Jonathan said as far as value, I think a big part of what I'm seeing is people are charging these bargain basement rates just to try and attract clients, and they're not getting the quality clients, the people who are going to pay the rates that they are wanting. So what ends up happening is they're attracting people who don't have any money. Like when you are charging bargain basement rates, you're going to attract bargain basement shoppers who are looking for a discount because they don't have any money. So while I don't see that so much in my service, I really don't get too many objections, because I think by the time a lot of my clients come to me, they're looking to get their invoices paid. So they need the help, they're willing to pay me. But I see the issues when I'm talking to their clients about their invoices. And I would say that's a majority of the invoices that I see that go unpaid, or the issues that they are having when I'm talking. There are conflicts about rates. It really, a lot of it boils down to they don't have the money. These people, and I see the invoices, they are not charging the rates that they should be charging, and so they are attracting these people who don't have the money to pay the invoices at the end of the day.
So price, in a sense, on both ends can be a signal. If you're pricing high, as Jonathan pointed out, you're going to attract people who are already budgeting for world-class talent, high-end talent. If you're pricing low, you're going to attract people who are saying, I'm looking for a affordable option with all the costs and consequences that might imply.
Yeah, know your value. Know what you're worth. I mean, you shouldn't, if you're bringing a certain level to the table, you shouldn't be charging bargain basement prices. You're going to be attracting the wrong kind of person.
And Mojca, how about yourself?
I just want to say that I agree with everything that Jonathan said about positioning, that it all starts with positioning. But I had an interesting maybe insight that I've had multiple occurrences where prospects came to me saying, just a price that they've made up because their friend said, hey, social media manager only costs $100 a month. And they came to me, so when I told them what my price actually is, they were shocked. So what I can do then is just, first of all, just teach them about how this works. What do you get for $100 per month? And just show them the value that I'm going to create when I charge a little bit higher. But usually, when prospects like that come to me, they usually just go away. I'm not willing to lower my prices just because of that. But I think that showing them and teaching them about this particular topic is just maybe a one step in another direction that we can all make, just to teach our prospects that if you want just the cheapest services, you're gonna get cheaper services, which basically means that the results aren't going to be something that you would like.
I think across the board, what I hear from everybody is that there's definitely an aspect of communication involved here with the prospect to both educate them and both understand the problem that they're experiencing. And touching on something that Mojca just said, I'm wondering how we individually work on quantifying the value we bring to the table for clients. Because as she just pointed out, a client might show up with an expectation of, oh, I'm going to be able to buy a pair of hands or buy the service for X dollars, but well, how do you quantify the actual value that you're presenting? Code isn't just code. Social media services aren't just social media services. There's more to it.
Sure. Sometimes sometimes it's easy to quantify. If somebody comes to me and says, hey, our analytics are showing that we're getting like 90% abandoned shopping cart rate on mobile. And we know how much they're doing per year in sales, and if you just say, well, for every 10% that I can bring that down by updating the site and making it more mobile friendly, they're going to make $10,000, $20,000 more per month. So it's pretty easy to quantify in a lot of cases, and you can focus your services on things that are going to deliver things that are easy to quantify like that. So I could say that. I could focus my business down and say that I optimize e-commerce shopping sites for mobile. And from then on out, I would have an easy time quantifying the goal. I would just say, or quantifying the value of the outcome. I would just say, well, give me access to your analytics. Let me know what you're doing in sales. Let me know what the bounce rate is. I'll take a look at your site and let you know if I think I can have an effect on it. And here's what I would do. Here's what the next steps are. So you can set yourself up to make it really easy to have a quantifiable outcome. But to your point, a lot of times it's really hard to quantify, and in fact impossible. It's almost impossible for, other than a really bottom line service like that, it's almost impossible for the developer, in my case, to quantify the value to the customer, because value is 100% subjective. So really the only person that can give you a sense of the value when it's anything less than dollars, something really specific like that, something that they have to do. So it's, if it's something like we are working around the clock, morale is horrible, we need some automated business processes to correct that, or we're doing something like our outreaches or our CRM is terrible, we're making all kinds of errors, we're emailing people that sending outreach emails to people who we're already working with, it's just embarrassing. So things like that are really hard to quantify, to put a number against, but the client will internally know how much it's worth to them, in the sense that if you give them a number, they can react to that number as being either too high, too low, or just right. And if you said to them, how much would it be worth to you to solve this CRM problem that you have? They probably wouldn't be able to go, I don't know, I don't really know. It would be hard for them to quantify. But if you said, if you go through the talk with them and you move them past the task that they wanted you to do, and you talk about this churn that they're creating or all these problems and how much stress it's causing them, and you get at the real root goal, which is that they want to relieve this stress, or they want to make their reputation better, or they want to treat their customers better, and you talk about that and it's on their mind, when you do put a number in front of them, they'll react to it in a way that, like I said, the price is either going to be high, medium, or low. So if you did a good job and you got a good sense of the magnitude of the problem, and let's say the churn one, let's say it's a big customer and they have big customers, and something like they're probably losing one customer per year that they screwed up. And if you imagine that those deals are worth $100,000 a pop, and they're enterprise deals, and they're really hard to get, real long sales cycle, for sure that you'd be saving them. If you save them one customer, it'd be in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. So then you can say, and then you think about, well, all right, here's what it's going to take me to do this. It might take me a month to deliver this. So if I price myself at, say, $10,000 or $20,000 for the month, they're going to be, if they're thinking about the right thing, which is the whole churn problem, and maybe they're losing customers over this, $20,000 is going to look like a joke compared to potentially losing a major customer. So it's all about having that first conversation, understanding what the goals are, getting a back-of-the-envelope calculation for what kind of numbers you're talking about, and then coming up with a number that's going to be good money for you based on your level of effort and is like a tenth of what their possible outcome is going to be. So once you've had that value conversation, there's a huge range, a huge margin. You can be off by tens of thousands of dollars and still have the client rush to send you a check. So I don't know if that answers the question, but you don't. I guess the answer is you don't have to quantify the value. You have to sort of get the client to be thinking about what it's worth to them, and then put a number in front of them that they can react to with a yes or no.
I'm reminded of the old, I don't know whether to call it an analogy or a joke, that the best way to make a decision that you're stuck on is to say, well, I'll flip a coin, heads I do A, B I do tails, and as soon as you flip the coin and see that it comes up heads, and you're like, oh no, I don't want to do that, suddenly you've been able to make that decision. Similarly, when you present that client with like, well, okay, the potential outcome is this, the price is this, they suddenly, where before if you had said, how much are you willing to spend on this, and they're like, I don't know. When you say, okay, it'll be $10,000, now they're able to say, oh gosh, that's too much, or it's only that much. It gives them that context. Right. Jeremy, how about yourself when it comes to quantifying the value that you could bring to clients?
A lot of times it comes down to calculations about how much time can we save their staff engineers, or how much can we reduce hosting costs by doing things more efficiently, that kind of thing. Like when people have a big, huge monolithic application, development feedback loops kind of tend to slow down, and so things that seem like a simple, easy fix can end up taking a good fraction of an hour, just because getting the application fired up and running can be slow because there's so much of it there, and so I want to look for things like, okay, can we do some things by splitting this up that is going to cut the time to launch this application in half, say, and then that means that for every hour that you've got an engineer working on it, we're saving that engineer 10 or 15 minutes, which by the time they're working on this thing for a full day means we've given them an extra hour or an hour and a half. And so you take a number like that, multiply it by what they're paying their engineers, by how many engineers they have, and then we've got a pretty good back of the envelope calculation on how much additional engineering time can we get you by making some of this stuff more efficient.
So in a sense, anchoring it to the positive upside of the engagement.
Mm-hmm.
That's great. Julie, how about yourself and your business?
I think this question's probably a little bit easier for me because I'm working with money. So the value of my services is, it's right there on paper. If you have an unpaid invoice, like the value of what I'm doing is clear. So for me, it's a little bit easier. If I'm doing monthly retainer work, I think I try and focus on, not only how much time am I saving you by doing this, but if you're a freelancer and it's just you, my services are something that's going to help your business to look more professional. You should be the talent. You should be focusing on that. If you can't afford an office manager, to have a third party be able to come in and make these phone calls and handle invoices and money for you, I think it brings your business to the next level. So aside from being able to just very easily be like, well, here's X amount of dollars that I'm going to be bringing in, I can also tell you, here's time that I'm going to be saving you, and here's how you're going to be looking more professional to your clients. So for me, easier question for me, I think.
That's wonderful. I really like it. And Mojca?
So I have a similar approach that Jeremy has, because social media is very hard to quantify, especially because my clients are so different. Each client of mine has different goals. Each social media is so different. So I actually, again, I just try to quantify it in a way that how much time I can save you, because the biggest expensive problems my clients have is they know they need to be on social media. They know that social media can generate leads, can generate new sales if you try hard enough, but they just don't have the time to try hard enough. So I actually try to maybe put that forward a little bit more, just how much time I am going to save you with, taking your social media and just working on it myself, so you don't need to do that yourself anymore.
That's great. And it's a similar approach for my business, where what I'm selling is less quantitative. So I frame it as the time savings to a client, where by investing their money in my services, the outcome for them is, hey, you have more time to focus on growing your business, running the parts of your business you care about, instead of, mucking around with this or that or the other thing. One thing we touched on earlier was the difference between consultants who price low and the type of clients that attracts, and consultants who price at the higher end of the spectrum and the type of clients that attracts. Well, how have you all gone about the process of raising your prices to attract those more valuable or higher budget clients?
That's a tricky one. I think, I don't know who said it, but there's a quote that your prices are the #1 most powerful thing that you can say about the quality of your service. But you can't just randomly pick some high number unless you have some credible claim as to why you are way more expensive than everybody else. So, or even why you maybe don't do hourly and you do fixed project bids, or you do retainer type fixed scope services or prototype services. So you have to. I mean, basically, it all boils down to trust. So when somebody is going to make a purchase with you, or anyone like us, any kind of professional service provider, the #1 thing, if you want to boil it all down, it's there's a risk, there's a danger that they fear that they're going to waste their money. So the best way, I think, for people like us and professional services and knowledge work in general is to just do everything you can to make them trust that you're going to deliver the value. So, that boils down to content marketing, boils down to writing books. It just boils down basically to delivering value all the time at every level, in public, speaking engagements and writing books and blogging and answering questions online. I mean, I wish, it'd be cool if I could just say, oh, there's just this magic thing you can do, and all of a sudden people trust you. But it boils down to trust, and the more people trust you, the more you can charge, basically. So I guess that's the answer.
And so that's been your experience as you've leveled up as a consultant and a practitioner. The more you've been in public, the higher you've been able to justify.
Absolutely. So I've literally walked off stage at conferences. I've spoken at maybe over 100 conferences, and it's fabulous because people get a sense of your whole persona. They get a sense of what it would be like to work with you, and if you deliver a passionate message from the stage that clicks with it's going to click with your ideal customers if any of them are in the audience. And you can see immediately if it happens, because after you get off stage, they come right up to you. And I've gotten contracts right off the stage on many occasions, big 6-figure contracts, just walking off the stage, because people are immediately like, this is the guy. We're not even going to look for someone else. This is the guy I need for this weird thing that I'm here to learn about. And they just trust you like crazy. It's like this, it's not crazy, but it's powerful to be in person and be in that sort of authority position of being up on stage and people just feeling it. So that's great. Writing a book is amazing too. If you're the person who wrote the book on the thing, you're automatically perceived as an expert in the area. So that is a huge source of trust.
If I can just jump in a little bit, because I have a similar point. So first of all, I agree that communicating, why you price higher than maybe in my case, other social media consultants is very, very important. Like in my case, I can achieve great results in a shorter period of time than other social media consultants. So I try to put forward that. But I think what Jonathan touched a little bit here is, like he said, persona, or like I call it, personal brand. So I think that communicating why you price higher and maybe developing a strong personal brand, like Jonathan said, where you walk off the stage or how you present yourself on Twitter, for instance. I think in my case, just my personal brand had so much to do with charging my prices a little bit higher and just, increasing it over time, because, people knew me and people wanted to work with me, not with any other social media consultant there is. And because they wanted to work just with me, I was able to raise my prices and not, shock the prospects or anything like that. So I think Jonathan touched on that a little bit, so I just wanted to just throw a little comment in there.
That's excellent. No, I think that's a really valuable point. Julie, I'm curious, how about yourself, for your business or your clients that you work with? How do you advocate they attract those higher budget clients?
Well, I think at least what's worked for me for attracting clients and being able to charge the rates that I want is I like to Jonathan's point, making yourself an expert. So I try to educate clients, and I find that really has worked wonders. So like I have an email course and I write articles about what are the best ways to avoid late payments and what are the best ways to attract certain clients that are going to pay you the rates that you want. And I'm very transparent about what I do, and I think that having that level of transparency makes you trustworthy, and I think that it allows you to be able to charge the rates that you want to charge, and attracts clients who are going to pay those rates and pay those invoices on time. So really that's what's worked for me, and so that's what I try to convey to my clients who are having issues getting paid when they ask me how do we avoid this in the future. That's really the point that I try to drive home with them.
Accidentally muted myself. I think that's really, really important, and that's a topic that's come up multiple times throughout these roundtables, the importance of educating your clients on what exactly it is you do, what the value of it is that you do, and that both inspires that trust, leads to that connection to your personal brand, and helps you charge more. Jeremy, I'm also...
People are like, well, how do you get clients if you're telling them how to do it yourself? How do you get clients? And I find that absolutely never deters anybody from hiring me. And really, if anything, when they do hire me, it makes my job that much easier because I know that they've already gone through all of these steps. So when it gets to a point where my services are needed, I know that they're on top of their game and that my job's going to be that much easier. It has never deterred anybody from hiring me. So I think education is key.
I also think education is valuable because it's let's pick on the metaphor of you don't want to know how the sausage is made. Well, if you teach your clients how your metaphorical sausage is made, they're going to say this is incredibly difficult. There are so many steps involved here. Everybody's nodding. I don't want to do this myself. And suddenly when you come in and say, well, I've been doing this for 10 years, I've been doing this for 5 years, even I've just been doing this for 6 months, they're like, oh, thank God, a professional. I want to just throw this money at you so I don't have to do this myself. Jeremy, I'd love to hear your experience when it comes to attracting higher budget clients or clients who have more money to invest in your expertise.
So one of the biggest steps for me was just realizing that I needed to go look for a different type of client than I had been looking for previously. Like prior to being an independent consultant, I ran an agency with a business partner, and we were always going after like local, small and medium-sized businesses. Often it would be a business's first foray into having a web app of any sort, or really even just a minimal website. And so it was, by and large, the bottom barrel clients that Julie mentioned earlier. It was people that were kind of new to the game, didn't know what was going on, didn't know what to expect, didn't know what to expect to pay, and so it felt like it was just a lot of struggle to try to get the rates that we wanted to be able to charge from people that weren't prepared to pay them. And we also found that many of those bargain basement shoppers were also some of the toughest clients to please, because it seemed like many of them had the mindset that the whole world is out to get them, and so if something didn't go right on the engagement, it's obviously because we were trying to screw them, not just because things happen. And they were often not very receptive to, oh, I'm sorry, we screwed that up, we're going to fix it, it's not going to be a big deal. And since moving and not looking for those kind of clients anymore, now I look for established businesses that have a large technology project already going that is really starting to move so fast under its own momentum that they can't keep up with it. And that, just making the change of who I look for has almost completely erased any pushback on price objections, because I'm just operating at a higher level in the game, and I'm dealing now, instead of with the owner of the business who is getting into doing their first web app, I'm often talking to a CTO who understands the technology that they have at play and understands the value of making that operate more efficiently within their organization. So it's, for me, mainly just been start looking for a different type of client.
That makes a lot of sense, and it really echoes my personal experience as I've grown my business. I think back to 3 or 4 years ago when I had my first clients, and I was charging, I mean, if I want to be honest, $25 to $30 an hour, and I just had the worst clients possible, where everything was either my fault, or they had a ton of changes, or they wanted to micromanage it. But as I've increased my rate by over 8 times, the clients I work with now are much more likely to view me as a trusted advisor on the project, somebody who they're bringing in because I have that knowledge and expertise. And the only way I've been able to get there is through the strategies we've covered: educating people, presenting to people, taking part in different discussions, making my authority known. So part of it is people now come to me and say, I've heard your name all over. I've had calls with prospects who say, I've heard your name all over. I keep hearing you on podcasts. I really want to work with you. And as soon as that happens, it's almost like you have them on the hook. They're invested in working with you. So when you quote that number, they're like, he's the expert, she's the expert, why not work with them? So flipping it around, we've talked a bit about how to attract those higher value clients, but there always is that risk of clients not paying. And I'm wondering if the personal experience each of you have where a project might have been completed successfully, but the final bit of money didn't arrive, and how you overcame that problem. And from Julie's experience working in AR, how she advocates consultants and freelancers overcome that in their business.
Should I start, since this is what I do?
Yeah, Julie, please teach us.
I personally I don't think I've ever had a client not pay my invoice, and I think that goes back to the value that you're bringing, and so it's attracting the certain kinds of clients. So I think there's more to it than just like, well, what do you do when a client doesn't pay? Because I do this every day, and I can tell you there's no simple answer. Every situation is different as to why clients don't pay invoices. So I think you need to back up and go back to step one and kind of, what we talked about a little earlier. When you're looking for clients that you want to work with, you really should be qualifying clients. You should be asking questions. You should be charging the rates that reflect the value that you're bringing. You're going to then attract a certain kind of client. And really, if you're qualifying, if you're getting everything out in the open, up front, day one, get it in writing, you know who you're going to be working with, the expectations are clear on both ends, for you and for them. And then when it comes down to that invoice, they're going to want to pay that invoice because everything's been clear, the communication has been there, the expectations have been set up, and you're bringing a certain level of value. And they're going to see the value, and they're going to want to pay that invoice because you're going to be someone that they're going to want to continue to work with. So I think it's a lot more than just like, well, what do we do when they don't pay? I guess the simple answer is get on the phone. That's one thing that I see when people hire me to call about invoices, past due invoices. 9 times out of 10, they haven't called. Sometimes people obviously need contact information if I'm going to be doing accounts receivable. People won't even have phone numbers for their clients. So it's like you've never once picked up the phone and spoken to this person. So I think rule number one when you are in that situation is to get on the phone. It's going to be much harder to ignore somebody on the phone than it is via email. And I can tell you, calling people every day about past due invoices, I have never once been hung up on. Never, not one time. So picking up the phone is key. Communication is key, but I think ultimately it goes way beyond that. It needs to be from day one. Qualifying clients, communication with clients from the beginning, setting up expectations, knowing your value and charging rates based on that, I think really is the foundation of making sure that your invoices are getting paid on time. But if you're in that situation, because it happens, pick up the phone. Like, for the love of God, get their phone number and pick up the phone. Nobody ever uses the telephone anymore, but you'd be amazed at the results that you can get just by picking up the phone. So, okay, rant over.
I actually sidestepped the whole thing by asking for 100% payment up front. So
okay, that's even better. Yes, but that goes in. I think that goes back to like qualifying your clients and setting up expectations. That should be in your like upfront conversations with them. And if they have a problem with that, you just like bye-bye. So like that's all part of that conversation in the beginning. But yes, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, one of the benefits of doing a software project that's fixed bid instead of hourly is that you know what the price is going to be. So you can say, all right, you know, here's the quote, here's how you can make payment, and you know, let's get it on the calendar. And you'd be surprised, or I've been surprised. You know, I get probably 80% of people who just don't even blink, and they just send the check sent. Some people will say, oh, well, can we do 50% up front and 50% when you're done? And I say, well, you know, software project, you never really know when it's done. We'll know when it's delivered, but there still might be bugs and fringe cases 3 months later. So let's just do half up front and then half in 45 days or on whatever other date, arbitrary date you want to pick. But let's not tie it to the end of the project, because if you sign off on a project and then there's bugs, then I'm going to charge you for the bugs. If we don't do that, then I'll just fix it.
That's a wonderful strategy. Jeremy, how about yourself?
Yeah, doing weekly rates, I now get paid up front, 2 weeks at a time, and I've had very few people push back on that. When they do, it's usually a pretty simple conversation where I just say, look, it's going to make the project go better if we do it this way, because I'm not going to be worried that I'm going to get paid. I'm not going to be taking time out of my week to ask you, hey, did you pay that invoice? Everything is just going to run smoother from top to bottom if that's removed as a consideration up front, and then we can focus 100% on solving the problems at hand.
And Mojca?
Yeah, just like Jonathan said, 100% prepayment, get paid up front. But before I did that, let's just say that I can be very intimidating when you don't pay me, and I can make you feel very, very guilty. That's it.
About a year and a half ago, I switched my entire consulting practice over to productized consulting projects, where I charge flat rates for fixed scope. You know what you're buying. It says on the tin. It's like a Campbell's soup can. You know what you're going to get inside of there. Prior to that, I was just charging hourly, and I was invoicing monthly after the fact. And it was a big challenge for me, because often I'd have clients who they'd receive the invoice and then they're like, it takes a week or two for our department to pay, and I'm like, fine. And then a week later I get, well, we have a couple questions about this line item. Can you explain it better? And I'm like, well, this is the work I did. It's a little hard to remember because we're now 6 weeks out from when I did it. And it just was a constant ongoing, I want to use the word battle to get paid. When I flipped over to requiring payment up front and making it very explicit, as everybody here has said, it's easier for the client to know, okay, this is how much I'm going to pay. I'm going to hand them the money, and then I'm going to get the service. Like, it's rare, I think, that I'm probably going to mangle this, but it's rare, I think, that you take your car to the mechanic and say, like, this is great. I need you to fix my carburetor. I'm going to pay you in 90 days. Is that cool? They're going to expect payment up front for the service. It should be the same in the consulting industry. Another question I have for the group is, for existing services that you have, what strategies have you used, or do you recommend to raise prices. So ideally, you're able to take on less clients. If you already have a service out there, how do you ladder up or level up what you're charging?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great thing about productized services that are relatively fixed scope is once you sell out of them, your price is too low, so you just raise it. I mean, it's fabulous. It's one of the, it's like it's such a different mindset when I work with software developers, and they're very used to the time for money thing, and it's really hard for a lot of them to get their heads around some other way. And but once you do, and it makes hourly billing by the hour just look so weird. The bizarre arbitrariness of it becomes self-evident, and you can have these fixed bid projects feel like a website teardown, right? And just say, look, no matter how big the client is, this is only going to take me X amount of days, pretty much. And I can just say this is $2,000, and I can put a price for it on my site, and I can have a buy now button, and just be totally automated, and then I get the phone calls automatically set up, and they paid, and we call and do the thing, and it's so easy. And if you can only do, say, 10 of those a year, and you're sold out, or 10 of them at a time, let's say, and you're sold out, then your price is too low, so raise it. It's some people. I've heard some people, like, every time they make a sale of a productized service, they raise the price every single time, which I think is a reasonable approach.
How about other people in the group?
I would just agree with Jonathan here, and I don't know which one of you, was it Jonathan or was it you, Kai, when we were talking about my book, and it goes for all actually productized consulting offerings. But when we were talking about pricing, someone said that as far as there are not like hordes of people telling you this is too much, keep raising the price. And that's it. That's my take on it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's valuable to keep in mind that there's a fear. I mean, I've experienced this fear personally of raising a price on a service or a product that I sell, but it's always an internal fear. It's the Buddhist concept of monkey mind, this like 7-year-old voice in your head that tells you, it's going to cost too much, you're going to lose all your clients, your business is going to catch on fire, when it's your brain lying to you, because your brain might gravitate towards being more afraid than not. And the truth is, the biggest signal that you're charging too much is clients saying, oh, you're charging too much. And to jump back into our conversation, you might experience that objection, and you could overcome that objection by focusing on, oh, well, here's the value this solution presents to you. This is the value of an engagement to me. This is how many hours we're going to save, or how many hundreds of thousands of dollars you'll save in your business. And you might still be charging too much for that value. You might have something on the table where you're like, oh, we're going to save you $100,000 a year. I'm charging you $1 million for this. The client might balk at that unless they have like a 50-year game plan. But until you start getting that pushback for, your weekly rate or your fixed rate or the rate of the book you're selling, there's always an opportunity to charge more. It's that concept of, consumer surplus in economics. If you're undercharging, the consumer's benefiting. If you raise the price, the consumer's still winning. They just aren't getting as much of a surplus as they were before. We're almost up on time here. I'm just wondering if anybody has any last thoughts they'd like to contribute to the overall concept of pricing and money and getting paid.
I was just going to say one thing that has helped me have confidence to kind of raise my prices over time is having a decent amount of savings to fall back on, so that if people are saying no, I don't feel like, oh, I have to get this one client. And then very closely related to that is also having just a general source of leads, so that I am talking to more than one prospect at a time, so that I don't fall into that trap of thinking, I have to land this one. This is the only client in the world. It's just keeping in mind the worst that they can do is say no and move on, and then you have more prospects.
Very valuable advice.
And just following up on that, I think you should never lower your prices just because, there's like one client saying you charge too much or something like that. But my advice would be, don't be afraid to price a little bit higher if the value is there, because you'll attract better clients. And not only that, you'll be happier yourself, which is, what's all about in consulting business.
And I think one of the most valuable points that everybody here touched on is the idea of getting paid in advance. I mean, the worst thing that could happen is you say to your client or prospect, "Hey, by the way, I charge in advance, be it weekly, be it daily, be it whatever," and they say no, and you negotiate down from there. If you enter into the conversation from saying, "Oh no, it's gonna, I invoice you 30 days out, and then you can pay later," well, you're setting yourself up to get paid 30, 60, 90 days from the time you do work. If you instead just say, "As a matter of my business, I charge in advance. This is how that looks," you could always negotiate down to something to accommodate the client, but you're starting from a much stronger position.
Yep, absolutely.
Well, thank you all for joining me, and I'm very, very happy that our panelists were able to help give you, dear video watcher, some insight into the topic of pricing and money. To our listeners, however you found this video, be it from purchasing the book or from a friend, you could find out more about it, the other roundtable interviews, and the book, The Independent Consulting Manual itself at independentconsultingmanual.com. And I just want to take a moment and thank all of our panelists once again. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Have a wonderful day.
Bye-bye.